So if somebody listened to the show and they call like, I wanted to call it, I couldn't get in touch, you can go ahead and schedule something for them privately. And you're also on Facebook, right?
I'm on Facebook, and I'm always doing public events in the South Florida area,
right.
So you can find out where I'm going to be.
Don't you have something just around the corner? I could have sworn I posted something today.
Yeah, I had one last weekend, and I got one coming in Fort Lauderdale, Miami, in the beginning of November.
Okay, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, beginning of November. Check out Joseph Labruto on Facebook if you forget the web addresses, or you can give me a holler. Thank you so much for tuning in this evening. And Joseph, thanks for being here. It's always so much fun, and time goes by too fast. Good night, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Good night.
Be enchanted and delighted. Connect each week here on WNN for the Hallie Elise Show. Also on Facebook and at HallieElise.com. Thanks for tuning in. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Talk 1470, WWNN Pompano Beach, Boca Raton, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
CPA for the People provides CPA services and business consulting for innovative creators. Collaborative, personal, affordable. We specialize in tax consulting, business consulting, financial statement compilation, and personal finance. For more information, please go to www.cpaforthepeople.com or call at area code 630-244-7893. The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Good morning, I'm Raquel the Bell on the one and only WWNN 1470. Today in the studio we have Tracy from We Are the People. You can join her every Monday night from 7 to 7:30 p.m. on her website, WeAreThePeople.tv. Tracy tackles the student loan dilemma and offers viable options. And now, here's Tracy.
Good evening. I'm Tracy Marks, and you've joined We Are the People. It's good to have you here this evening, and Jeff Van Treese is back to join me this evening. We're going to touch on PACs. We never really quite finished that conversation last week, but we also want to talk about the Republican debate. Now, if you're not familiar, you can find us every Monday night from 7 to 7:30 on our website, which is WeAreThePeople.tv. Also on iHeartRadio, that's WWNN 1470, which is also local to South Florida on the AM dial. I'd also like to mention that Student Services Society, you've heard me talk about that many times. That is the nonprofit that Don Cleveland and I have started in order to help those that are struggling with student loan debt. And we also want to educate those who are up and coming into the college and their parents as to avoid these student loan debt traps, because it's really hard to live with. So we are going to have our first annual Christmas party fundraiser. It's going to be on December 17th, which is Thursday night, at Churchill's Pub in Miami, which is on Northeast 2nd Street. You can look that up. Churchill's is an awesome place. They've been around since 1979, which happened to be the year that I came back to Florida. So it's like I'm going full circle, Jeff. So we're going to have at least 6 bands, possibly 10, and maybe some little entertainment in there. And we are still working on getting our nonprofit status, so we'd love for you to come out and help us with that. Enjoy some great music. Our headliner band is going to be Sun Ghosts, and you can go to www.sunghosts.com to preview their music. Also, CDs make great stocking stuffers, and we're just going to have a party. So come on out, look up Churchill's Pub. They're awesome. Look up Sun Ghosts and come out and visit us that night. So, the Republican debate, number 3. I'm telling you, I hear more commercials and clips on Donald Trump and how he was just so unhappy about the way he was treated.
Well, I think some of the other candidates were unhappy, and we got the usual liberal bias accusations that we always see with these Republican debates. But yeah, he thought that he wasn't treated very nice, and I think we can probably expect that from every debate going from here on out.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to say. We're not talking about the issues, we're talking about being mistreated. And, that was over his tax plan. And Trump's thing is he never really answers. He always refers to somebody else. Well, so-and-so likes this and so likes that. So in that respect, I don't think he ever really gives a good answer. But, I mean...
He gives an incomplete answer because he says he's going to bring someone on to negotiate something, and then we'll all find out about it when it's time. Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of scary, but what's scarier is he's like number one.
Well, he's sort of treating it like it's a business negotiation where it's just a bottom line, and if the numbers aren't good, board of directors votes out the CEO, but. That doesn't really work that way with the presidency of the United States.
No, and that's what people don't understand.
There is no bottom line.
Yeah, and not to mention we're what is it, almost $18 trillion in debt as a nation now?
Yeah, it's probably that high.
And nobody's really talking about that.
Well,
they're talking about it, but they're not giving any answers as to what they're going to do. But yeah. Trump is going to get the wall paid for by Mexico, where nobody else can do it because they're a politician.
Well, they're not giving specifics. So, I mean, for example, Ben Carson, who's they're neck and neck with Trump right now, has been saying there's too much government waste, too much.
Well, there is.
Which there is, but he doesn't say where it's going to be cut.
Well, probably not military, though. And that's where, billion-dollar accounting
that's where
errors.
That's where there's huge government contractors as well that are, making a lot of money. Our former Vice President Dick Cheney knows quite a bit about that with Halliburton.
Oh, it's just ridiculous, the waste over there. I mean, $100 a bag to get their laundry done, and they had no choice. I mean, that's not Halliburton, but I mean, that's just one of the things with the contractors. They're paid ridiculous amounts of money. And not only that, I mean, they're bringing in outsiders to come in and do the jobs that the soldiers are getting paid next to nothing to do.
They're getting paid far more. They're getting paid sometimes 3, 4, 5 times as much. Could be even much more than that. With soldiers getting paid much less, it's really astonishing.
So that's not very fair. So we've got a lot of no answers.
A lot of no answers and a lot of generalizations and a lot of incomplete answers. I think it was interesting how, Carly Fiorina mentioned that we have crony capitalism, and then she said, well, the government's too big, and then businesses become too big, and then they become intertwined with each other. And she was correct.
It's true.
But that is true, but she was missing the next obvious point, which is it's because of PACs and because of Citizens United and everything leading up to Citizens United. It has to do with corporate personhood, which we've talked about quite a bit on this show. It has to do with now money is considered speech and is a matter of constitutional right for corporations. And now corporations have far more rights, far more power than flesh and blood human beings have. So those should be the next obvious steps in the discussion. But it stops far short of there. It's just saying, well, the government's too big, we need to cut government. Whereas there's
what usually happens is they cut the little guy down here so the work can't get done. You can't get through on a phone, you can't get through on an email, you can't get to anybody to get your stuff taken care of. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and of course there's always talking about although you can't really do it when there's this when you have a lot of people that are receiving government aid, demonizing them is always kind of a double-edged sword, although the Republicans, I think, did that much to their detriment last election cycle. I think they've learned they can't do that with the whole 47% comment from Mitt Romney. But
well, they're still doing a pretty good job of it.
They're still doing it. They're doing it a little bit more subtly. I think they're probably doing it more with their rallies than they are in the debates and on TV and so forth. They're trying to come off as a little bit more compassionate. This whole sort of
except for Paul Ryan's not running for president, but he just he's the most powerful man in Congress, and he wants his family vacation, but he can't see that he should waste taxpayers' money giving that to other people.
Right, we're really the only major industrialized country, certainly in the Western Hemisphere, that does not have vacation, paid vacation, and paid maternity leave.
And that goes to productivity. I mean, I just don't understand why people don't see that. They know. I mean, these people that are all doing this, they know that family time, that makes them more productive. Why wouldn't it make other people more productive?
Well, it has to do with the business model, and to the extent that we think of employees as inputs, so to speak, the same way that you would think of a monkey wrench or a tool or a commodity. In which case, well, if you see them as sort of transient, going from job to job, well, then you just work them to death, and then they move on. But if you see them more as an investment, which some companies have done that, Google, Microsoft, among others, that have paid maternity leave, and don't quote me on that, but last I heard that a lot of those tech companies did, and so they might be trailblazing. Of course, they could change their mind at any second.
And a lot of times it's just within certain departments or upper levels too that get this. Again, you're lower paid. Now, again, I'm not referring to specifically, but that if you like certain companies or you think, it's good to do a little bit more research because often it's departmentalized.
And of course, it's really worth emphasizing that the Fortune 500 companies can easily afford this, and they won't feel it one bit if they have to provide these benefits to their employees. The real thing that I think they're afraid of is that they'll be, once these benefits are granted, they'll want more benefits, and they're worried about that. I've seen this in our in the legal profession a lot, where sometimes businesses will really fight opposition to something, or they'll fight the other side if they bring a claim because they're afraid there'll be more claims. I think that we see that a lot with the upper crust, the top 10th of 1%. They're worried that somebody's going to come after them, that we're all going to be coming after them because they'll see that the whole thing's just a big charade, that they really haven't. They're there for reasons that are not legitimate. And once we see that, if you have choices, you're going to demand more. You're going to want things. You're going to demand things that you're not getting, and so it goes back to us versus them. Divide and conquer and distract the public from seeing what's really going on. And so we're focused on things like immigration, or we're focused on things like
which are important issues.
They're important issues.
But
well, it's not just that they're important issues, it's blame someone else. So it's like, don't blame us.
Both parties do that. I think they're one party really, and they're this is all part of the plan. They keep us fighting amongst ourselves.
Well, the Democrats and Republicans are both really part of the business party, because you have the largest financial institutions on Wall Street, such as Goldman Sachs. We were just talking about it before the show. They give money to both parties.
They absolutely do. And for Rubio, for example, he got quite a hefty amount from them. And I'd encourage everybody to go to opensecrets.org, because you can see just exactly who is what and who's getting what. It'll show you the top 5 companies. It'll show you more than that, but initially you can go on there and see the top 5 companies giving to them, and the top industries that are giving to them, okay? Now, Goldman Sachs is pretty generous to Rubio, but oh my God, what they're giving to Jeb Bush is amazing.
Well, they that way they can't lose. If you give to everybody.
Well, no matter who, you owe me. And that's the problem with the PACs.
Well, they owe them in the sense that they turned a blind eye on, it's not just Goldman Sachs, but certainly all of the financial institutions. They turn a blind eye on their malfeasance. That's why we don't. We never find out about it.
Nobody ever gets prosecuted. Yes, we don't hear about it in the news till it's all said and done with, pretty much.
Yeah, and of course we're there for the bailouts if it happens.
Yes, and people, when are you going to get tired of the bailouts? Citizens United truly has to go. There's amazing amounts of money in politics to this. You can look back from before 2010 to 2010 to now this 2015-16 for the presidential election. unbelievable amounts of money to slander each other, basically.
And it's now free speech. It's money is speech. So if the government attempts to in any way restrict or limit the ability for corporations to give money to politicians, they are infringing on their free speech rights. That's the law of the land right now under Citizens United. So that's what we have to deal with. So it's kind of like changing the rules. It's like you're playing a game, like you're playing a board game. Then you change the rules, midway. It becomes difficult. It's that's what power That's what power. How the term power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is what absolute power does. They can just change the rules, and
they do.
And now the Constitution means something completely antithetical to what it was intended to mean.
Well, it's ridiculous. But even on your credit cards, and not just credit cards, but you can read, this is our contract, this is the way we do it, but we can change it without notice at any time. And anything online that you app, anything, this is the way it is, but we have the right to change it whenever we want to, and we don't have to let you know.
Don't have to let you know, and they often don't let you know. See that they can change banks can change the terms of your account. Certainly telecommunications, anyone that has dealt with the duopoly, if you have either Xfinity or AT&T, you know that they can just add charges.
Whatever they want.
They can just add charges and then refuse to take them off. I mean, I don't know how many times I've called and said, I look at my bill and I say, I never agreed to this, and it's just, sorry.
Oh, sorry, we changed our contract.
So, this is what we have. We have monopolization, we have concentration of power, and ultimately
and none of that was really dealt with in this debate.
No, it was. They can't go to the extreme like they did before, where they're just blaming people that can't afford to pay their rent, but they have to sort of be in this middle ground where they're saying, well, no, we're really for the little guy, but we're for the little guy because in the sense that we want to we want to make the richest people richer, and that will just help everybody else. So that's what they're trying to do now, sort of going back to the Reagan argument of the 80s, the trickle-down theory.
Yeah, and Reagan did a lot of damage. I never really realized how much.
Nobody ever talks about trickle-up. Which is the other way, if you think about it.
Well, there is somebody that actually does talk about triple up, and I've actually showed the video on this show. There's a company out there, a group, whatever you want to call them. They're called Represent Us or represent.us.org. Just put in Represent Us, you'll find it. And they actually have a little video that shows the transfer of wealth. And it's one thing to talk about it, but when you actually see it, a visual for it, it makes a huge, huge difference. It's more impactful. And so I would also encourage you to go there as well.
Yeah, definitely check that out. We've seen the income gap just explode out of proportion now. We've seen the destruction of the middle class, and that's something that they're certainly at the Republican debates, they're going to have a hard time explaining.
Well, they haven't really addressed it.
Well, it really goes to show, it's one of the things that we're always told by the right is that people that are uber wealthy, it's because they worked hard for it. Of course, that's just fallacious on its face. You can't. There's not enough hours in the day, and there's not enough brain cells that anybody could possibly earn $10 billion. It's just not. It's not possible. There's
we don't
no
even
way.
have that much cash in the United States, do we?
No, actually we do, but we just don't. We don't see any of it. It's hidden, or it's dark money, or whatever. But it's
the C4s and 6s.
Yeah, so we have so that that's difficult to explain. So they have to come out here and say, well, there's too much regulation. Or my favorite line is where they say it's too complicated. Something that's complicated must be bad. If it's difficult to understand, it must be bad. So we have to simplify the tax code. That meaning that we are going to tax the poor and middle income citizens at a higher rate, and we're going to tax rich people at a lower rate. Yes, that's exactly right.
Nothing like simplifying the language, or I wouldn't mind getting rid of the IRS, though. I got to tell you.
Well, the IRS doesn't actually decide what the tax rates are, and that's, I think, sometimes part of the issue with the discourse is that, the practices of the IRS, as aggravating as they are, they don't actually decide the tax rates. That's something that's decided by Congress.
By Congress.
And that's
Good
something
point.
that, that has to be brought to the forefront. And it's
but
amazing.
You never hear anybody talk about that.
Nobody
I've
talks
never
about it.
heard about anybody say Congress regulates the tax rate. I mean, not in that way. It's almost like it's blamed on the IRS.
Right.
By them, yet they're the ones that do that.
Yeah, the other interesting thing that I have to bring up is that there's been a lot of economic research on the multiplier effect of letting corporations get these huge tax cuts, these Wall Street entities, and a lot of times they just sit on the money. They just hold it. They're not spending it, and they're not using it to hire anybody. It would be interesting to see if there was a requirement that they actually hire people when they get tax breaks, but there's no requirement. They're free to do whatever they want.
But they're supposed to get those tax. I actually got a couple of jobs when they did that thing for businesses. They were supposed to get some kind of subsidy or something if they hired so many people, and I got 2 jobs that I never got to get because they cut the budget. The company cut the budget before I was ever brought on board.
Did they get the subsidy?
I don't know, and I didn't know how to find that out.
That would
How
be
do
an
you find
interesting
that
question. Don't think you can. I don't know.
I
don't know how you'd even go about finding that out.
See, so that would be more transparency, but God forbid we can't have that. So what did you take away from the Republican debate?
Well, the moderators, I think that in some ways they did a good job. In other ways, I think that they fell on their face a few times. I like the first question, what is your biggest weakness? Because there's absolutely no way that any politician is going to answer that honestly.
But they asked that, in job interviews, and they decided to get rid of that question quite a while back.
Well, everyone says the same thing, which is that they try too hard or something like that. I like some of the creative answers. Huckabee said that he plays by the rules. That's his.
Oh, that's his greatest weakness?
That's his greatest weakness. Oh,
man, if that's a weakness, now we're in trouble.
Forget about the fact that he was trying to essentially advocate open disobedience of the Supreme Court's ruling within the last month from a.
Do these people not know it's the information age? Honest to God.
It's something. I think you can just say something that just absolutely contradicts the truth. So I thought that was an interesting response. I thought that Ben Carson's weakness was also interesting, which is that he never thought he could run for president until everyone around him said that he should run for president. So that's his weakness. I mean, that's really
wow.
That's really something. So nobody really gave an answer. I think that Jeb Bush said that he was too optimistic and he couldn't.
Oh my God! They're taking all these things that we're supposed to be aspiring to and making them weaknesses. What the hell's wrong with that?
Well, I think that they're just trying to dodge the question. I think John Kasich just openly dodged the question. Just said, "I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about his 2 minute 60-second stump speech." So he just said, we need to get Americans back working again, and the only way we're going to do that is to give make the rich richer. That's the only way we're going to get Americans back to work.
Right? Yeah.
Which
we
is
know
really,
how that goes. Everything's going overseas. Come on, you can track that, people. I mean, now I got to admit that I was bored with the Democratic debate pretty much a lot of times. The Republican debate, I mean, I can't vote for any of them, but they're much more entertaining.
They certainly are more entertaining, and I think you got to thank Donald Trump for that. It would be much less entertaining if he was not there.
He is a showman for sure. But about Ben Carson and Manatech, they're making it sound like Manatech is a slimy company, and that is just not true. I've taken those products, and they are amazing. I wish I could afford them. But yeah, I mean, and that goes back to what the media is allowed to do, and Reagan did that as well. Not only did he strip the FCC of leadership and money, but he also made it where they could just, there's no truth that has to be told anymore. It was the beginning of the death of journalism.
I think that that's absolutely true, and it's amazing. It's also depressing to see how the device is used to get around that fact, which should be very much apparent, by asserting the opposite. And so we saw that last week when Ted Cruz was upset about one of the questions during the debate, and he said, we can see that there's this huge liberal bias, and we can tell that none of the moderators would ever be voting in a Republican primary.
Well, they probably wouldn't.
But that's irrelevant, really, because and that's the device.
It's supposed to be irrelevant.
But that's the device that's used, is that they say that because let's say that 99% of the journalists were members of the Democratic Party, or for that matter, let's say they were all members of a Maoist group or Socialist Party or whatever. That wouldn't tell you anything about the actual media output, the actual information that's disseminated over the airwaves. That's the only thing that really matters. That would take a bit of work to actually have to go out and evaluate and examine the actual output of the media. And as soon as you do that, you'd fall on your face because it works in the opposite direction. You see that's extremely pro-Wall Street and scrupulously avoids ever reporting the malfeasance of Wall Street. But so instead they have to focus on how they vote. So.
I like it being the opposite people asking the questions, because they're going to give them a harder time. They're going to hold them more to, hey, It
really should be a cross-examination.
I think it would be, I like it.
It would be great to see it if they were under oath and they had a judge there that could hold them in contempt.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
It's like when you're in cross-examining a witness in court.
I like that idea.
You can ask them something. You frame exactly what the question is, and if they're unresponsive, you say, "Judge, please instruct the witness to answer the question." If the witness continues to dodge the question,
let's do that,
they go to jail.
And come on, I don't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent. These are issues that we can come together on. We have got to get the corruption out of politics, and the biggest step that we could take initially is to get rid of Citizens United.
Yeah, there needs to be a constitutional amendment at this point.
But I really like that whole judge thing with the moderator. Yeah.
It would be the only way to actually stop them from dodging.
Now that would be a great Saturday Night Live skit.
That would be great. That would be absolutely great. The other thing I wanted to say, while we still have time, is also some of the candidates will talk about how they came from humble beginnings. Their parents were bartenders or whatever. Marco Rubio always says he lived paycheck to paycheck.
Oh yeah, but we don't want to give anybody education or anything like that.
And that's the thing, because we assume that because they came from that background, they're going to be representing people from that background, the interests of people from that background. But that's not the case at all.
Well, Mr. Lord, that used to be the top dog at Sallie Mae, he was a projects kid. I think they hold a type of contempt for the people that they left behind. It's like, okay, you dumbasses,
Maybe they do.
You can't make it, and I did. Well, how many can really do that? I mean, that requires a lot of other factors.
Well, even if they don't feel that way, someone's throwing a pot of money at them. And so in order to do otherwise, they have to say no to that pot of money. And that's just not something that they're going to do. And they have political ambitions. They want to get elected. You don't get elected by looking out for the interests of the poor people and the middle class. You get elected by getting donations from large Wall Street entities, and that's just the way that it is. Just to give an analogy in the minute or so we have left, it's kind of like, a lot of people friends of mine that I went to law school with that represent banks or they represent insurance companies, a lot of them absolutely hate their clients that they represent, but they still have to represent them.
They take the money.
They have to. I mean, they have to.
Well, yeah, you can't really unless you just walk away from the money and can't pay your bills.
Right. And so whether they actually believe what they're saying, who knows? They might not believe half the things that they're saying, but that's what they have to say in order to be
state attorneys and public defenders especially, that's their job. So we've got 1 minute left. Any specific points you'd like to make?
As always, I'm disappointed. They never did talk about climate change at all, and I don't think they've even discussed on any of the debates so far.
Well, it's not real, and God wants it, so why bother?
Exactly.
Well, thank you for joining us again. Remember to check out Churchill's Pub and our Facebook page, We Are the People, Students for Liberty, on Facebook. New York City is the and we'll be back to continue this conversation next week. Coming back, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, great. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you again for joining us. And tune in next week. We'll be here. Take care now. Thank you.
You have been listening to We Are the People with social advocate Tracy Marks, who every week bring to the light the needs and changes in our current system. Tune in every Monday night at 7 p.m. on WeAreThePeople.tv and participate in the conversation in the chat room or call 888-565-1470. Tune in next Monday for more information and facts and stay aware of your surroundings and challenges at all times. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. CPA for the People provides CPA services and for innovative creators, collaborative, personal, affordable. We specialize in tax consulting, business consulting, financial statement compilation, and personal finance. For more information, please go to www.cpaforthepeople.com or call